What's going on, Bulls Nation, and welcome to the CHGO Bulls Podcast. I'm your host, Will Gottlieb, and I'm dressed up on this Halloween as our host, Matt Peck. I hope you guys like my mustache and sunglasses combination. It's totally worth it just for that one intro line. But I am joined on this Halloween by my good mate in Australia, who's got a million things going on, so we appreciate you taking some time to talk Chicago Bulls and NBA with us. Mark at MK Hoops. How you doing, my friend?
I'm fine, William. I'm not scared. Do you know why? Because it's November 1 here. Halloween is done and dusted for us, but happy Halloween to all that celebrate the spooky season. William, you don't look scary at all. You look quite handsome, actually, as typically is the case, which is frustrating. But
I'm supposed to be scaring you. This mustache is scaring me.
Well,
Mark, has it ever snowed in Australia on Thanksgiving? I doubt it because it's like middle of the summer.
Well, one, we don't have Thanksgiving, but
I mean,
does
on
it snow?
Halloween. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving more than Halloween, as you can probably tell by that comment.
Yeah. I mean, it snows in Australia, but not where I am. I've only ever seen snow twice.
Not in Melbourne.
Nah. But
it snowed here in Chicago today, and
wow.
that was a trick because that was not a treat. I think for me at least, driving around in the snow is no fun, and it's still October. I don't really feel like I'm ready for that, but I am ready to talk about a blockbuster trade that happened at 1 a.m. Chicago time.
Mm-hmm.
James Harden finally being traded. The Harden saga part 6 is now over. He is a member of the Los Angeles Clippers, and we'll see how long that lasts. But of course, being the earth-shattering NBA news that is, even on this Bulls podcast, we got to take some time to talk about it because I think there also are some tentacles that could be creeping into the Bulls stratosphere. So we'll talk about the Harden trade. We'll talk about that and how it might affect the Bulls. Then, of course, we have not really gotten into a deep dive of, as much as you can, of the first 4 games of the season. Mark, I want to get your thoughts on what you've seen, how real it is, how concerned or excited you are, depending on the results. So we will get into all of that and more. But Mark, I finished my write-up of last night's game at about 12:30. Mm-hmm. I sent it to Kevin, our editor, our content head, and I got in bed and I checked my phone and I saw Woj bomb, and it was James Harden is heading to the LA Clippers. And then I waited another 45 minutes to figure out what was coming back to the 76ers. And it turns out it's quite a bit. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind throwing up the details of the Harden trade onto the screen here. Thank you very much. Clippers get Harden, Philip Petrusev, and PJ Tucker. And then they also got a 2027 first round pick swap with OKC. We'll get into that more in a little bit. They got the worst of their 2 picks. 76ers in return for Harden get Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, KJ Martin, a 2026 protected first-round pick via OKC, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick from the Clippers, and a second-round pick in 2024 and in 2029. And then, as I mentioned, that mystery third team that, of course, it ended up being Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder got into the action by taking on a pick swap with the Clippers in 2027 and then trading their future 2026 pick, which presumably will be pretty good by that time because the Thunder are so young and good, back to the Clippers so that they could get the 76ers that second first round pick that they so coveted. Let's just first do Mark, just big takeaways from this. Were you kind of surprised that it got done when it got done? Did you think this was going to last longer? And then just on its face, what were your kind of thoughts about the initial return?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, like including Philip Petrusev really swings this towards the Clippers' favor, to be honest with you. But no, being serious, William, this was a good trade. I think this is a great trade for Philadelphia, actually.
It's such a good trade for Philly.
Yeah, and look, it might be a really good trade for the Clippers as well, like their 10-man rotation, assuming health, which is maybe a big assumption for this ball club. But assuming health, I like their 10-man rotation, generally speaking. How they all work it out on the basketball court will be very fascinating, particularly the Harden and Westbrook piece. I'm assuming one of them will have to come off the bench because how the hell do you start all these guys at the one time? But yeah, I'd love this for Philadelphia to get 2 first-round picks, one of them being an unprotected 2028 first from the Clippers for a guy who wasn't going to play for you, who was just being a complete malcontent. And in addition to that, getting three or four decent role guys who can help you right now, but also help you clear your books even further in future years, particularly as the Sixers are wanting to be a free agent team or a cap space team next offseason potentially. Like, this is a great trade for Philadelphia. At least that's my view. I'm a bit of a Daryl Morey stan, so maybe I'm a little bit biased in that sense. But I think this is a great trade, to be honest with you. So well done to the Sixers. Its implications for the Bulls will be interesting, which we'll get into. But yeah, this is a really good deal for certainly for the 76ers. You mentioned OKC doing their OKC thing, but I kind of feel like it's a win-win for all parties involved. But for me, at least from my view, I think the 76ers won the deal.
Yeah, I think so too. And the big reason why is like, this is not a bidding war. There was one team that was like maybe interested in Harden, and they also could have potentially had other options with Malcolm Brogdon. They started, I think, 3-0 this year. Tyrese Maxey's looking like an all-star. I think he just won Player of the Week. And it's like, they're not in any rush to get this thing done. So for them to extract this much value, I think was really impressive. And I think it kind of goes to show that if you are the team dealing the star, you do have the leverage as long as you're willing to be patient with that. You mentioned the cap space thing. I think that's a huge factor here, if not like even more than just the picks. Philly wants to be a 2 max contract kind of free agent destination next year. And so obviously you get, you move off Harden, who's an expiring, but you get back Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, all expiring contracts, all mid-sized contracts that they can now deal again this year after 60 days, or guys that can help them win now and then will expire at the end of the year and they can create a ton of space. But I think the key here is also attaching PJ Tucker to James Harden, who has 2 more years, including this one on his deal for like $11 million. That's a really good piece of business to get off of that money and open up even more space next summer. So in addition to the 2 second-round picks, a protected first and an unprotected first in 2028, which, by the way, the Clippers, I mean, they are just this old team full of injury-prone guys who are all expiring contracts with Harden, or I'm sorry, with Harden now, Kawhi and Paul George. They could end up being a disaster down the road, and they have no way to protect against that other than potential free agent signings. But right now their books are so, cramped up that they're not going to be able to do that. So that could end up being a really valuable pick down the line. The pick from OKC, which they got, is protected. It will be the worst of, I think it's like Houston, Oklahoma City, and the Clippers. So as I mentioned before, it's probably going to end up being that OKC pick, which will be in the 20s. But to get a first-round pick in the 20s, an unprotected pick in 2028, that could end up being really good, 2 seconds and a ton of cap space, and just to get done with this whole Harden saga, I thought that was fantastic. For the Clippers, I mean, they're as all in as you can be, so you may as well be all in as you can. And that's what happens when you trade for the ever disgruntled James Harden. It's going to be a wonky fit. It's a lot of ball pounding and guys that need the ball in their hands. They've got Russ, they've got Kawhi, they've got Paul George, a lot of guys that need touches, even like Norman Powell off the bench. It's going to be a wonky fit there, but they're kind of betting on talent. And I think also this idea that like there's going to be injuries throughout the course of the season. So if you can get 2 star players on the court at any given time, that's like pretty good innings eating, where you can survive some of these lingering injuries or even like mid-tier, midterm injuries, and still be in a pretty decent spot come playoff time. Because I think last year teams kind of realized gaming it and trying to like pick your opponent in the first round, that could get you in trouble, where you're now in a play-in game and who knows what can happen in a single elimination. So I like it from the perspective that the Clippers are going all in. They kind of like, this is their window. They've got to try to placate Kawhi and Paul George to bring those guys back. they just kind of had to do it. And I think he was the best star available that wanted to be there, that, they had a real chance of getting, and we'll see how the fit works out, but I like that. And then for the Thunder, this is just kind of like sneaky, brilliant business again by Sam Presti. So he gave up a first round pick in 2026 that is protected very heavily. It's like the worst of the OKC, Houston, and Clippers pick. So like I said, it's going to be in the 20s. And in exchange for that, they got the ability to swap first round picks with the Clippers in 2027. And what I said about the Clippers pick in 2028 looking pretty tasty, you can bet that's probably going to be the case in 2027 too. I mean, even if Kawhi and Paul George stick around that long, they're going to be 36, 37 years old. So exactly. You have to assume those picks are going to have good value. Presti's also like got so many picks now that he does have to consolidate, and to consolidate them into a better pick, I think is pretty brilliant. So I agree. It's good business for all parties. It's good to just kind of wash your hands of the Harden situation. If you're Philly, I thought they did as good a job as you can. And now we kind of turn to what's next, because they are in the situation where, like I said, they could just stick it out with the team they have. They just added a bunch of good role players, but they could also decide to go star hunting again, which is what Daryl Morey is kind of known for.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to add to this. Like, I don't know if these teams are done dealing, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers and 76ers are both making moves at the deadlines, and not just like end of bench type moves, but like legitimate moves. Because as you alluded to when you're going through the Clippers rundown, and as I sort of spoke to, the Harden Westbrook dynamic is going to be interesting in terms of how that fits from how many you got 4 guys that want to touch the ball now. Like we talk about the Bulls offensive problems, and is there enough basketballs for all of these guys, or enough possessions? That's even more true in LA now. But for the 76ers, like, they could go and make their move now rather than waiting for free agency. Like, they have some stuff now to maybe go and make like a trade for Pascal Siakam as an example. Like, he's someone that potentially they would target in free agency, but maybe you just do it now, get him in via a trade, get his bird rights, and try to make a run with the big 3 this season in addition to the years to come, rather than just sort of waiting until the next off season. So there's a lot the Sixers can do, especially with all these additional assets, which again we'll come back to in a second, and how potentially it may connect to the Bulls. But even for the Clippers, again, like, their bench has a lot of guys that may or may not fit. Like, I was surprised that Norman Powell remained with the Clippers. To your point, like you touched on it before, like that's another scorer that this team has on the bench. Where does he fit in all this? So I wouldn't be surprised if these teams aren't done dealing. They're traditionally teams that like to do deals regardless. It is interesting watching other ball clubs do trade deadline deals, whilst yours virtually never does. But yeah, I think these 2 teams aren't done dealing. They're going to play it out now. And I think why I like this for both squads more generally is, particularly for the Clippers, is like they've done it now. They've done it early. You get more time to integrate someone like Harden. Whereas if you try to do this at the deadline, in January or February, you've only got 20, 30 games to really sort of integrate someone like Harden, which is a difficult thing to do given how much he likes to be on the ball. Similarly for the Sixers, like now they've got a long lead up time to determine what they want to do. Do they just want to keep this group together and keep that cap space intact for 2024, or do they want to make a move now a little bit sooner? So the fact that they've both done it now, giving themselves time to really assess and giving themselves more optionality, like that's another reason why this is a really good deal for both teams. So yeah, this is a good trade, good fun trade to discuss here on Halloween.
Yeah, and I think the last point I have on this is something that Bobby Marks pointed out on the show with Zach Lowe today, which they did. And that's that, like, next year, because this team is going to be in the second apron, the Clippers won't be able to aggregate those kind of salaries to get another star player in the door. So, I mean, this was kind of their last chance to be able to pull something like this off. And, the 76ers will have a ton of cap space, so they're not going to be in that position. But it does, those kind of smaller salaries that you want to aggregate into one bigger star salary, you can understand why those have value and why that could sort of inspire teams to make more trades like this before the season is up, because this could be the last time they'll do it. So we talked about the Clippers potentially making a trade. I think the 76ers are kind of the ones that are still in the hunt, so to speak. So let's take a look at what their draft pick situation is, and then we can get into what's actually tradable out of there. But first, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind throwing up the graphic of just the Sixers draft capital and what they have right now. Not that one. Let's go with this one. Okay, so 76ers now recover a pick in 2026, which allows them to trade that pick, obviously, and one of 2028 picks. They now have two. They also have a pick in 2029, a swap in 29, and their own pick in 30. So they can either trade the 29 pick and a swap, or the swap and the 30, but they cannot trade the 29 pick and the 30 because of the Stepien rule. So they've got basically 3 first-round picks and swaps, and then 8 total second-round picks now that they can move. And if they do wait until draft night, they will be eligible to trade their 2024 first-round pick. So they're in a good spot right now as far as being able to make that next swing. And that, of course, takes us to some potential targets. You mentioned Pascal Siakam. OG Anunoby has also come up, as well as everybody's favorite trade star, Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine was listed by Chris Mannix as one of the 2 targets that the Sixers could go after. Let's just start with this, Mark. Do you think that LaVine makes sense with the Sixers?
No, I don't. I don't. And depending, I guess it depends on how the rest of the roster is structured. But generally speaking, no, I don't think it makes sense. I think a backcourt of Maxey and LaVine, whilst it would score it would be incredible from a scoring perspective, whilst it would be an all clutch backcourt, which maybe Rich Paul would enjoy. I don't know how you build a functioning defense with those 2 guys in your backcourt. Similarly, if the plan is to also have Tobias Harris as part of the piece, then that doesn't really add up to it as well. Now, maybe he wouldn't be. Maybe he would be the salary coming back in a potential Sixers Bulls trade. But I just don't like the mix. I don't love it. I get why they would need a scorer or another wing type scorer, but I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily who they need. It doesn't make sense to me from that point of view. I don't think he is a Daryl Morey type player in the sense that Zach loves to get to that mid-range game. So I don't know if he really makes sense on a lot of fronts. But having said that, irrespective of what I think and what you may think, what we as Bulls fans may think, as we spoke about last time you and I had a chat, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, they're going to be involved in all these type of things. The minute any sort of trade possibility comes up front, whether it's teams trying to unload or teams trying to acquire guys, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are going to be connected to those teams. So long as the Bulls are sort of flirting around this 500 range, not looking at their complete best, which again, we'll come and talk about the Bulls more a little bit later. But so long as the team is underperforming or, reaching the same vaunted levels that we have been for the last 2 to 3 years, then Zach and DeMar are going to remain connected to these type of, they're going to be involved in these rumors. So I don't think it really makes sense for Zach to end up here, but he's either the type of player that kind of makes theoretical sense for the Sixers. I don't think so, but I think he could there will be certainly people talking themselves into the Sixers targeting Zach from that point of view.
Yeah, I agree that he's maybe not the best fit, but when you look at some of the players who could potentially be on the market, and a lot can change between now and the deadline. And I don't think that this will necessarily happen before the deadline, just because all the players that signed over the summer are still not eligible yet to be traded. If the Sixers are going to do something, they kind of want to take some time to figure out what they have and what they need. If they're in a situation where they need, or they feel they need a real scoring boost, maybe that's someone that they look for as opposed to an OG Anunoby. But if not, then, who knows what they could be interested in or who becomes available at that point. But right now, it does kind of feel like Zach and the Raptors guys are like the only star players available right now. And I use star, kind of judiciously with OG, who's obviously a very high level 3-and-D player. But I wouldn't necessarily call him a star caliber player. But that's what Daryl Morey is after. Shams reported today that teams around the league believe that the Sixers will be active for the remainder of the season to see if they can go get another star caliber player. Maybe OG fits into that category, maybe not. But to me, Daryl's perspective has always been get the top talent out there, put them together, and fill in the gaps with role players. And I do think there are maybe some defensive concerns with Maxey and LaVine back there. I'm not sure they're any worse than Maxey and Harden. You still have a really good backline defense, and you still have a bunch of bigger wings that can help you switch and insulate a little bit. I also think Zach is like a fine defender now. He's still kind of got a reputation as being pretty bad, but I think it's really hard to be a top 5 defense unless everybody's bought in and there's been a commitment on that end from him. I'm not saying he's perfect, I'm not even saying he's good, but the effort is there. I think he understands what it takes to be a part of a good defense. And with the scoring, I mean, Maxey's been great, but you still need multiple guys that can go get you a bucket and can create space for Joel Embiid. I know Zach and Joel are really close. They have a ton of respect for one another. Zach and Joel have the same trainer, Drew Hanlon. Zach picked Joel for MVP last year. Like, I think that's the kind of person that Zach would sort of fit into a role a little bit better next to. Whereas with DeMar, where they're kind of, I don't want to say like fighting, but like I think they both kind of view themselves as being the top dog on the team, and that's where the Bulls can run into some issues. I do not think that would be the case with Embiid, and I also think at this point in Zach's career, he kind of knows that things need to change if he wants to be part of a winning team. So I actually can see the fit. I'm not sure if it's the best possible option out there, but I know there aren't very many options. Having with Dame already being traded, Giannis is now locked in. Like, some of these star names are no longer available, and Embiid is one of them. So you want to get him in a position where he's really happy playing with guys that he likes. And as I mentioned, he and Zach are really close. So I could see it. I wonder, like, I mean, they have a lot of assets. They have a lot of tradable stuff. I'm not sure how much of that would really be on the table for a guy like Zach. And of course, none of this matters if the Bulls are in a position to get into the playoffs or, they don't feel like they're getting the kind of return that they need. But let's play hypothetical, Mark. Like, is there a world where the Bulls are, let's say the Bulls are in a position where they want to sell on Zach. They want to move him. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Philly has enough for the Bulls to get that done?
I don't know. I mean, based on the trades that have occurred more recently, maybe less so, ones in years back where the context was a little bit different. The CBA positioning was a little bit different. I don't know if they do. And I say that based on what the Bulls seemingly their expectations are for Zach LaVine in a trade. They want to be wowed in a trade. They want something gigantic, maybe not a Rudy Gobert level type of deal, but this type of level trade where you get back, an unprotected first and a few swaps and some protected picks down the line. Like, is that enough for AK and Eversley to pivot from their continuity plan? I don't know if it is, because these kind of deals have sort of been murmured or rumored in, over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, particularly with the New York Knicks. So some sort of deals like this where you get back some draft capital, but not necessarily all of the draft capital, so to speak. So I don't know if it's enough for the Bulls. I think based on market conditions, it probably is enough for Zach LaVine. But yeah, I don't know if the Bulls would accept that. So that's the interesting dynamic to this whole thing. But similarly, like, I don't know if the Sixers would do this for Zach LaVine as well, because they're not only just forgoing the assets that they currently have to send out for Zach, but then they would also be forgoing their position as a potential free agent destination. So it's twofold in some senses. There's multiple opportunity costs that the Sixers have to sort of determine from this standpoint. They would probably have to give up their 2028 first from the Clippers, and obviously additional picks in addition to that. But then when you bring in Zach, when you bring in his potential $40 million or $45 odd million next season, that cap space that you would have had or potentially could have had with someone like Tobias Harris expiring, as an example, that goes away. So if you had plans of going after an OG or a Pascal or someone else in free agency, you kind of need to factor that into your decision making as well. So do you want to give up those assets? Do you want to give up that optionality that you currently have? Which is why I like this deal for the Sixers. I don't know if I would want to do that if I was a Sixers. And I say that as a Bulls fan. If this was a similar position and Zach was on, an opposing team and we were in the Sixers position, I don't know if I would want to give up all that stuff, plus all that optionality for Zach. So yeah, I don't see it, William. And I keep coming back to the Lakers. Whether it's DeMar or whether it's Zach. I think it probably makes more sense for a team that's over the cap and is projected to be over the cap for those to be the targets for someone like Zach and DeMar. And I guess where my mind went after this trade, like if PJ Tucker and James Harden can net you all this stuff, what can DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso net you at the deadline? I mean, it's a similar level players in the sense that you've got, I mean, they're different players, but if you think about Harden and DeMar in terms of where they stand in the league, like they're top 30, top 35 guys. And then you've got like those all defensive guys like PJ Tucker and obviously Alex Caruso, who at this stage is a far better defender than PJ Tucker. But like, if you can get this kind of level of return for those guys, Harden and Tucker, what can you get from DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso? So that's where I kind of went into sell mode. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. But coming back to your question, I don't think this is enough for the Bulls because their asking price has just been so exorbitant in the past that I can't imagine them willing to, maybe walk that back a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bulls want a lot, and my takeaway from this is that, like, if you're the team selling the star and you're the only one that's selling a star, even if there aren't a lot of suitors, like, you can get what you want if you hold firm, because at the end of the day, the star is what the other team needs if they want to contend. So if the Sixers are in a position where they really feel like they want a star and Zach's the only guy available, maybe they do it. Now, I think the long-term flexibility with money is a really strong argument, but even if you do trade for Zach and you still have like full max contract to be able to go out and sell next summer, I mean, you could still go get another max guy and then sign Maxey to be an over the cap team. So I don't think that like eliminates that possibility for them. Now, Zach is maybe not the guy, but if you look at some of the players that are going to be around next summer, it's like DeMar, Paul George, Kawhi. Who knows where those two LA guys are going to be? Probably back in LA. So there's not a lot of options. I think the value of cap space right now is not getting you as much because teams are so afraid to use that money. Where 3 years of Zach after this is like, I don't know. Maybe that does put them in a strong position financially. So it just kind of depends on that being what they want. To me, I think they absolutely have enough. I'm not sure if the Bulls could get everything, but I mean, right now they could give up a 26 pick, a 28 pick, a 29 pick, and a 20 and like 2 or 3 swaps. Like that, 3 picks, 3 swaps is more than the Bulls are going to get for Zach if they do that. So if they are able to get that much, even if those picks aren't going to like return immediately, like they're not going to be able to get into this next draft or in the 25 draft with these picks. I think they could be really valuable. It's just a matter of being patient and potentially set you up really well in the late 2020s, early 30s. So I think these picks are valuable, especially unprotected. I don't think that the Bulls could get all this stuff, but like this is the position that the Knicks are in too, where they have like an absorbent amount of picks. Teams wanting to negotiate with them are like, give us everything. Like, why would we take less than everything? We're just going to let you go get another guy. Like, no, give me everything. And I think if the Sixers are desperate enough and the Bulls hold firm enough, they could get quite a lot for Zach. Now, that like I said, it only matters if the Bulls are willing to actually trade him. But I do think it feels like there are more suitors now, and who knows? I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But let's take a quick break here and move on to some Bulls stuff. We spent a lot of time on that. I think it's really interesting just in terms of a thought exercise about trading Zach, but ultimately it comes down to how are the Bulls doing right now? And that is what we'll be talking about after the break. But first, we want to tell you about our friends at Fubo TV. Fubo TV has 140 plus live channels of sports, shows, movies, and news, and you can stream it anywhere, anytime, live from any device. You can watch the most Chicago sports for the lowest price, and you can start watching immediately with a free trial. There's no contract, no cable, no hassle. You just sign up and start watching. You get 1,000 hours of cloud DVR included with no extra charge. And if you want to watch your local teams while traveling, well, guess what? You can do that too. If you are trying to watch the Bears and Montez sweat, they're going to start winning games now. You can watch that on Fubo TV. They've got NFL games, Bears, NFL Network, and Red Zone. They've got NBC Sports, college football, Big Ten, Ryder Cup, UEFA, Euro qualifiers. They've got it all. So you can watch your favorite college football and NFL with Fubo. Go to www.fubotv.com/CHGO to sign up for 15% off your first month with Fubo Pro.
Drop alert. William, Saturday, November 4th. Do you know what's happening? Do you
drop?
Know? A drop, but do you know what's dropping?
What's dropping?
It's the Air Jordan 1s, the reimagined Royals. And look, if you're in the sneaker game, if you like to get yourself some sneakers, you were dressing up as Matt Peck before. This guy has sort of ventured into that territory where he's trying to be cool. He's trying to wear some sweet sneakers. I'm assuming he's doing this, but he's aware that November 4, those Air Jordan 1s are dropping, the reimagined Royals. And do you know how he's aware? Because he's downloaded the Soul Savvy app. That app will notify you when and where this particular pair of sneakers drops. Now, we're obviously referencing this particular pair, but if you just want to get across more generally, what's happening from a sneaker point of view, William, then Soul Savvy is the app that you need to download. It's got you. It keeps you across all the latest news, the releases, anything. It just makes sure that you're across what is occurring. So you can set up alerts. You can do all that stuff. You can put everything in your calendar to make sure that you're aware of when all your favorite and best new sneakers are dropping. So, friends, can we just say, just sign up. Why would you not do that? Sign up. Click the link in the description of this episode. And when you do, go to soulsavvy.com/CHGO and you can sign up for the Soul Savvy app. Get across everything that is happening. And maybe you could be an owner of one of these Air Jordan 1 reimagined Royals. Why would you not do that, William?
Why would you not do it? Trick or treat. Go buy some sneakers.
There you go.
Mark, let's talk about the Bulls. Let's talk about how they've looked so far.
The Bulls? Okay.
Haven't really had a chance to talk with you since we did our season preview article before the first game. So I'm glad we have a chance to catch up here. What have been your big takeaways watching this team through 4 games?
My takeaways, that Larry David gif where he's like, that one? Yeah, that's kind of me at the moment. Like, I don't know how to feel. Part of me wants to jump off a ledge as per usual, but then the other part of me is like, well, this team is 2-2. They played pretty damn well against the Pacers, even though I have my concerns about that Pacers game more generally, which we'll get into. But to be 2-2 after looking so bad for so much of this young season, I think that is a positive. And like I said, I think there were some positive signs in that Pacers games, particularly in the half court, as to how things were working. Now, maybe that's just a 1-game sample. We shouldn't get too excited. But I really don't know how to feel just yet, because the first 2.5, 3 games, whilst there was pockets of good play in there was also some extremely concerning things that made me very scared from a process point of view. But then even yesterday in that Pacers game, though the result was a good one, like I said, you're 2-2, you're 500. This is a difficult stretch that you're getting through. So the wins and results do matter. But again, from a process standpoint, there's just some alarm bells going off in my head. So I honestly don't know how to feel at this stage, because like I said, there's things that I'm concerned about, but ultimately what really matters is your record. And for the team to be trying to establish something new and predictably fumbling their way through certain elements of that, but still coming out of the first 4 games with a 2-2 record, like that ultimately is a good thing. But I just don't know how to weigh that versus the process side of things, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, William, I guess is my thing. I need to see more. I need to see more than a 4-game sample. I'm not convinced. I'm still concerned. There's still some red alerts or red flags, let's say. But I guess, at the end of the day, 2-2 is what matters right now.
Yeah, I think so. It's become pretty clear to me after preseason, frankly, but certainly these 4 games that like this whole we're going to play a different style thing is like not really happening.
Yeah.
I think there's some stuff that they're doing. Look, they're trying to do some stuff. They're trying to get into actions, using screens a little bit more. You've noted a couple plays. I've noted a couple plays on Twitter of just like DeMar coming off of screen to get himself in to that mid-range elbow area where he can go to work, as opposed to just DeMar stand at the elbow, get the ball entered, and now go to work. And I think that adds a lot of value. I mean, it's not like a huge thing that jumps off the page, but when you get the defense moving, when you force teams to have to defend other guys, that just means there's more space for you. I wrote an article last night after the game, which I think is really, I think it really gets to the heart of what I'm talking about when I say the Bulls need to shoot more threes. Because last night they shot only 17. Obviously, they won. And I was just kind of noting like some of the insane improbabilities of winning a game while shooting only 17 threes and just like how incredibly rare that is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were replying like, well, they're not good shooters, so they have to do what they're good at. Or like they don't shoot well, they didn't add shooting, so it's not worth shooting a bunch of threes just to miss them. And it's like, you guys, you can't just like punt on one of the most important categories in all of offense. Like you have to shoot threes. You can't not. Obviously, with the 3-point variance, like the Pacers shot 30 more threes than the Bulls last night. If they're going to shoot 26% on them, the Bulls are going to, eke out a win, just given the fact that they got 10 offensive rebounds and had 31 free throw attempts. Those games are going to happen. But we also know that that's going to happen 38 or 40 times a year, and that's how many wins they're going to get. More often than not, they're not going to be able to win those games because they're at such an offensive deficit that it's impossible to overcome, no matter how good, no matter how dominant DeMar or Zach or Vooch are. That's why the Bulls went 40-42 last year, and it's why they went 8-15 down the stretch the year before. They're not good enough. They don't have the high-end talent enough to be able to do that. They do have enough talent to be able to win roughly half their games, and if that's the result you want, then maybe you are happy with last night's win. And I'm not trying to take that away from them. I think it was a really good game. But when we're talking about like committing to a process that you believe will bear results, they have not done that. I think they've offensive rebounded really well. Aside from last game where they got to the free throw line 31 times, I do not think they've gotten to the foul line enough. So they've added one element that they want to, of like the 3 or 4 that they've talked about. And yeah, I don't think it's good enough, and it's going to be a work in progress. But right now, I'm not very encouraged with that. So, Sarah, can you throw up the graphic of the shot profile of this year so far compared to last year?
I don't know if Sarah will be able to do that, William, because she's turned into a ghost just momentarily because of Halloween. But I'd certainly take your point. Like, and to no one's shock or surprise, I am agreeing with William Gottlieb. Who saw that coming? But yeah, I guess it all comes back to perspective and like what perspective you want to apply. Like we've got Martin in the comments suggesting that the threes last night didn't necessarily happen because they didn't need to happen because the team was attacking the paint and getting towards the basket and scoring efficiently from that point of view, scoring efficiently in the mid range, which is true. In this one game sample, like maybe you didn't need to lean on the 3-point shot to get the W, which is fine, but that's not what we're discussing here. We're sort of profiling this singular game and how this maybe potentially is going to be tracked or used as a trend for what's to come, in addition to all the things this team has said about revamping and changing who they've been. So when you see a game like this, despite the result, you still have to think about it from a process point of view, because what we saw last night is not what the Bulls have themselves have been saying as to who they want to be. So is this them leaning into who they've always been just because old habits die hard? Is this them just playing this game out just by the organic nature of this specific game, this specific opponent, and taking advantage of what was them given to them? Is this them sort of reverting away from who they wanted to be this early so soon? Like, these are the questions that we have, and we don't really have the answers to these questions because it's so soon into the season. We need more data to really truly assess this, which is why I don't want to go too far and have any hot takes on the matter. But that's why you and I are concerned about this singular game in terms of what it potentially could mean against the next 5, 10, 15 game sample. Do we get more of this? If so, more of this is more of last season, and we know what more of last season was. And I'm just continuously stunned by the segment of Bulls fans who don't want this team to shoot threes. And when we say shoot threes, we shouldn't have to preface this or add in a caveat of that we're talking about good threes, or we're certainly not talking about this team being first in 3-point attempt rate. We're just talking about hey, can you at least be league average? That's effectively what we're inferring. But the amount of feedback that you and I and a lot of other people get from Bulls fans around why shoot the three? Why this team isn't good at shooting threes? We don't need to shoot the threes. It's like, okay, guys, we kind of understand that, but there's a difference between shooting 17 threes and getting a W and shooting, like you said, 32, 35, 38 threes a game, something like the normal range type thing. We're not expecting the Bulls to come out here and shoot 46 threes like the Pacers did yesterday, but can we at least break 20, 25? Like that would be ideal, surely.
To put it in perspective, last year they were last in the league with 29 threes attempted per game. They shot 12 fewer threes. Last year, league average was 33 and a half. So they're shooting half of league average. I mean, you just can't win that way. I think people who are saying they can't shoot, so they shouldn't shoot, are falling victim to this one game result.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think next game, when they get blown out by 30 and everybody's yelling about why they can't, compete with these teams if they're not shooting threes on that same level, like you have to have the bigger picture in mind. Exactly. Martin in the comments. I agree with the comments on fixing the shot profile. The next several games will show us the trend line. I also think on a nightly basis, we need to consider the matchups. But again, you're going to have individual outlier games. Like this was an outlier low 3-point shooting performance. It's not going to happen again. Like they've done this once in 3 years. It's like, it's an outlier. But at the same point, it's a trend of shooting way less than league average, way less than their opponent. And it's the trend that gets them in trouble. If they want to win games, they need to diversify their offense. And at the very least, create spacing so that DeMar can do the things that he needs to do in the mid-range. I'm not saying DeMar needs to shoot more threes. In fact, he probably doesn't. Vooch probably could shoot a few more threes. He shot like 2 last night. The year he was an all-star, the Bulls traded for him, he was averaging 6.5 threes per game in Orlando. And then he comes to Chicago and wants to stop shooting threes. He took 4 last year. Like he's capable of doing that at a much higher level. Zach can be shooting 10 threes a game. He's that good at it. And for the people that are saying like the Bulls don't have shooters, that's why they signed Javon Carter and Torrey Craig. Kobe is a good shooter. Like Patrick is a 40% shooter. These guys need to get them up because they're cramping the space on the floor and making it harder. So it's not just about like improving the variance and trying to catch up to these teams. Because you're right, they're probably not going to shoot the same percentage, but it's, can you create spacing and take advantage of the fact that defenses are completely loading up on the paint to try to take away DeMar, and now you're not helping the flow of the offense at all. You're just standing there. You have to be able to take those threes, and I think like the floor spacing and the end result of what you're going to see after 78 more games is going to be not good. It's not going to be what you want. And yes, they got away with this one time, but I think my point is exactly that. You're going to get distracted by the wins and losses as they happen. That's part of being a fan, but it's also part of trying to see the bigger picture through the trees. There are going to be games where you win outlier 3-point shooting matchups. There's going to be games where you shoot 42 threes like they did in the first game and still get blown up by 20. But you have to commit to a style of play that controls the things that you can control. You can try to crash the glass. You don't know if you're always going to get offensive rebounds. You can try to crash the glass. You can try to draw fouls. That's going to be hard to do if the only way you're doing that is by getting pump fakes at the elbow. Like you have to have spacing for driving lanes to be able to draw those. You can't have spacing if you don't have 3-point shooting. So it's more than just shooting threes. And I think if we continue on this path of just continuing to be like the exact same shot profile team, it's just not going to work. And I want to get more into the shot profile stuff, but let's take another quick break here because we want to tell you guys about our friends at Game Time. It's the best place to buy tickets to any of your favorite sporting events you've got coming up. They've got the fastest and easiest way to get sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They've got killer last minute deals, all in prices. You can see a view from where your seat would be, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes away all the guesswork out of buying tickets. As I said before, you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. Your all-in prices show you the upfront total. There's no hidden fees, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that familiar code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And William, before you get to a game, assuming you've got your Bulls ticket in hand off Game Time, before you head to the United Center, maybe head down to one of the 2 Goose Island beer tap rooms, whether that's the tap room on Fulton Street or whether you're going down into Lincoln Park or West Town, wherever you're going. Essentially, the point being, get a beer in your hand before you go and watch the Bulls and support our friends over at Goose Island, who have got you covered with the premier beer roster. We talked about the Clippers rosters before. We talked about the Sixers rosters, the Bulls roster, etc. That's all nice. None of it compares to the Goose Island roster, who has obviously the 312, wheat ale, premium stuff, the full pocket pills, and all the others beautiful beers that they have on hand there at their tap room. So, friends, like I said, grab yourself an ultra fresh brewery exclusive beer. Head down to one of the tap rooms, get a few beers into you, and after you've done that, obviously head down with your Game Time app and your ticket in hand and go catch those Bulls doing their thing. William, talking shooting profile. Let's go see that shooting profile in person, but let's continue talking about that shooting profile, eh?
Let's continue talking about it. So it's only been 4 games. Sample size is small, and there's been a lot of variance on either end, right? We talked about 17 threes last game versus 42 the first game. But that's why we average things out. And so if we look at the shot profile, is Sarah back with us? If not, I can just read them off. The Bulls, there it is. Beautiful. Let's just hold this up for a second. So this year, the Bulls are taking 35% of their shots at the rim. Last year, 34.4. So slight improvement, 0.8% higher. Let's look at long mid-range shots. Still number 1 in the league, 15% of their shots this year, 16.8% last year. So short mid-range is about the same. Long mid-range coming down a little bit, but if you combine those, their shots all together in the mid-range are still making up a third of their total offense. Last year was a little bit higher. So they are bringing that down a little bit. And I think that's where you're seeing some of these shots filter into corner threes. And that's great. They are the 11th highest percentage of their shots coming from corner threes in the league at 9.2%. Last year, they were at 8.6 and they were 22nd. On all total threes, they're 29th again, 31.1% of all their threes, or 31.1% of all their shots are coming from beyond the arc. Last year was 30.4, but it's still 29th in the league. So there's going to be some variance here and there, maybe a percent up, a percent down, whatever. But for the vast majority of this stuff, we're looking at the exact same shot profile. And I think this is what I'm really trying to drive home. We know that the Bulls are good enough to win games just based on pure talent. There's going to be days where DeMar DeRozan scores 20 in the fourth quarter and they can beat the Raptors. There's going to be games where DeMar gets, Stefan Noah had a great video breakdown of what happened at the end of that game where DeMar was able to get a switch onto Halliburton, 4 straight possessions. He got 3 buckets and a foul. Yep. They have the ability to keep these games close and a lot of times win them. They've already won 2 clutch games last year. They really struggled with that. So they're going to be able to win like a little less than or a little more than half their games. But if we're talking about actually building a more sustainable offense that can actually improve upon 24th, they need to diversify this shot profile. They need to be more willing to shoot threes. But I think more importantly, they need to be able to get to the rim more. They need to be able to generate paint touches. That's really what Billy has talked a lot about. And if you look at what their paint touches are, last year per game, 17.8, and that was 28th in the league. They were just not getting into the paint. This year, it's a little bit better. They're 20th in paint touches per game at 19.8. So 2 additional paint touches per game launches them from 28th to 20th. And I think that's got to be the area of focus of improvement more than even the 3-point shooting. Because as Billy has said multiple times, what happens when you get paint touches? You collapse the defense. You either get shots at the rim, you can pass it off for layups or for 3-pointers. You can get fouled and go to the free throw line. That's a huge booster to your efficiency. And also when you drive and the defense is shifting, it's much easier to get offensive rebounds that way because the defense can't find their guy to box out. There's easier lanes. And for a team that's focusing on offensive rebounding more, that opens up those opportunities. So it's really more than anything about paint touches. And again, last night they were able to get a ton of free throws. That's a byproduct of paint touches. I think that's kind of why they were able to be saved from the 3-point stuff. In addition to the Pacers shooting like 6 of 45 on threes. But when we're talking about like overall building a more sustainable shot chart, I just haven't seen that yet. There's elements of what the Bulls wanted to do that they have been following through with. The offensive rebounding, they've gotten a lot better. Last year, they were 28th in the league. Right now, they're 13th. Their free throw attempt rate is actually about the same, but last year that was 20th in the league. Right now, it's 9th. So not a lot has actually changed except for the offensive rebounding. And as the sample size gets a little bit bigger and things start to normalize, I think they're going to run into these games where maybe they can't figure out a way to win, or maybe they don't get a situation where they're able to get 31 free throw attempts in a game. I mean, that's a huge number. So it's just about generating a more sustainable source of offense. And how you're able to do that is generating spacing, getting to the rim, and not just relying on DeMar elbow jumpers.
Yeah, and look, the funny thing is, William, like even though they're 2-2 right now, they could realistically be 3-1, even in spite of their shooting profile, if they were shooting at a normal level right now. Even those shots that they are taking, they're completely inefficient right now. It's just generally speaking as a team. Obviously, because this is a 4-game sample, for whatever reason, they've just come out slow. They're not making their shots. But even if they were making their shots, they potentially could have been 3-1. And I say that assuming the Raptors game holds, the Pacers game holds, and maybe if they shoot a little bit better, maybe they actually beat the Pistons. So you're looking at a 3-1 record, which would look very, very good. You would be towards the top of the East after 4 games. But I would like to think, given my understanding of who you are as a person and who I am as a person, that we would probably be still saying the same things because, to your point, like the profile stuff, the numbers speaks to more of what we've seen last year. So,
well, and they're also much closer to being 0-4 than they are to being 3-1. I mean, they narrowly won 2 close games and then also got blown out twice. I think that speaks to what their games are going to look like. It's either going to be they can't get anything going, and they rely on Zach to score 50, or they're going to keep it close and then maybe DeMar will win it, maybe not.
But you know me, William, I'm very C-red. I like to think of the positives most often. So I'm giving them the that 3-1 advantage in that sense. But like I said, like we would be talking about the same things, and I understand why maybe some fans would bristle at this and why they're sick of us talking about the shot profile, talking about the 3-point attempt rate, free throw rate, all these sorts of things. And I understand it because at times, to be fair, I'm sick about talking about the same things. But the reason why we're talking about them is based on what we've seen the last 2 years, in addition to what this team has said themselves. It's not like we're just banging the drum because we want to. The team themselves have said this is something they need to change. This is a focus point. And through 4 games, we haven't necessarily seen that more generally. So that's why we're talking about it and why we're going to continue talking about it. And let's say where it shakes out. After all, this is a 4-game sample. Maybe things do change. Maybe they don't. But the point is we need to continuously monitor these things because the team themselves will be doing that. So that's why we're talking about it, Bulls fans. That's why it makes sense to talk about it. Apologies if it is a bit annoying in some senses. But it's interesting nonetheless, just to understand what is happening with your ball club.
Yeah, I mean, it's the identity of the team. And I think I'm not saying anything that Billy hasn't already directly told me about the things that the team wants to do. And so we're talking about, like, can they adjust the style of play in the way that they want to? We'll see. I haven't seen it so far. You want to talk about some lineup stuff that you've seen real quick, just because I know people have been irked by Patrick and the fact that he's still starting in favor of Torrey Craig. Any quick notes you want to get to, and then we can wrap it up?
Well, yeah, I mean, the starting lineup is clearly not working. And part of the reason this team is lucky to be 2-2 is the starting unit more generally just hasn't got it together. They're minus 8.4 points per 100 possessions, which clearly is not good. They've only played 98 possessions, which again, small sample, you don't really expect it to be that much. But what is interesting to me is the fact that Torrey Craig and Patrick Williams have basically played the same amount of total minutes. Where that diverges is the fourth quarter. Pat is, if we think about the 10-man rotation of this team, and the main 10 guys, Pat is 10th in the team on the team in terms of fourth quarter minutes. So the fact that starting unit isn't working, the fact that Billy is very clearly Keith Bogensing Patrick Williams at this stage, I think that will remain a focus point for me going forward. Like we've talked about the shot profile stuff, but the combination of this starting unit and its effectiveness, again, that's something we need to continue to track. But yeah, it's just been interesting. Obviously the team hasn't performed very well more generally, so you would expect the early return for all of these lineups to not be overly positive. I think there's only 2 players on the entire roster that have a positive plus minus at this stage. But yeah, I'm still concerned about the starting unit and its viability at the moment, and I do want to see more of it. Pat had a standard average Pat game yesterday, which was good to see considering where the first 3 games have been. But I need to see Pat continue to build on that. And if he does, what does that do in terms of changing the dynamics of that starting unit? So that to me is fascinating early on. But very clearly, Billy has started to lean in already, more so with his vets, Caruso, Craig, and Javon Carter running through, that 4-5, that 4 and 1 lineup position. So very interested to see what happens with Pat over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick takes on this, but first, one more break to tell you guys about Circle K. We are so excited to be partnered with Circle K. Check out your local Circle K for the best coffee, beer, and snack selection, and of course, their premium gas. They've also got freebies and giveaways down the road. You can become an Inner Circle member by downloading the free Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. You can get deals like saving 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. They've got a membership program. You can get every 6th free on a selection of Circle K products, including pizza, coffee, and fountain drinks. So like I said, download that free Circle K app. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
And after you've done that, William, head over to DraftKings Sportsbook, who, friends, they're the official sporting betting partner of the NBA. And because of that, with the NBA basketball being obviously coming back too, they are celebrating with an unbeatable offer. So new customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you throw down $5 on the NBA. So whether you win it or you lose your bet, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub because you'll get that $200 with free bonus bets when you lay down $5. So if you're interested, obviously, in basketball, you want to have fun watching the basketball. Maybe it was more fun when you're watching a Bulls game and you got money on it, potentially on the other team, not necessarily the Bulls. We should have running bets on the over-under in terms of how many threes the Bulls take per game. I don't know if DraftKings run that particular item, but I'd be interested to see if they do. But download the app, the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and use promo code CHGO. And like I said, when you do, you will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet $5. So only on DraftKings Sportsbook, promo code CHGO. William, the crown is yours, my friend.
Thank you. I need a Halloween crown.
There you go.
All right. So real quick, because we've only got a couple minutes here, I just wanted to point out that, yes, I think Torrey Craig is a better fit for the starting lineup. I am not over Patrick Williams. I think people are ready to send him to Windy City. I've seen that a lot in my mentions. Let's chill out. It's been 4 games. He's struggling here, but let's not just punt him to the curb. Torrey Craig, though, has only played 15 possessions with DeMar, Zach, and Vooch, and all those possessions also came with Kobe. So he has not played with Caruso in those 3. Early returns, though, in 15 possessions, very small sample, minus 142.9. So it's not like that lineup has been going all that great either. Torrey Craig has been great for the most part. The shot is kind of hit or miss, but the offensive rebounding, the impact that he has on the game, I think it's definitely a more conducive fit. But to me, the big issue here is Zach, DeMar, and Vooch are minus 14.2 together in 181 possessions. And no matter how you slice it, that's the real issue. You can complain about Patrick, you can talk about Billy or, whatever. It's those 3 guys cannot be so reliant on what role players around them. They need to be better as a trio, and the role players are there to support them, but they shouldn't be there to make or break them. So Patrick, I think, is not the person who best supports those guys, which is too bad because I think he could really benefit from that kind of role and has just not done what he needs to in order to do that. But again, that does not mean you're just like done with him. You're trading him. You're letting him walk in free agency. But I think ultimately it really just does come down to like, are those guys good enough together? And so far, minus 14.2, that's pretty strong. I mean, only 181 possessions, but this is not just these 4 games. It's these 4 games plus the last 2 years. And to me, that's the biggest thing.
I somewhat agree. And I agree that obviously these 3 need to be better as a 3-man combination, but the reason why their net ratings in these lineup data is what it is because of who they're paired with. Now, I completely hear the argument that they shouldn't be that dependent on who those 2 other guys are with them. I get that. I agree with that. It would be nice if that wasn't the case, but that is the case. We know that to be the case. We have enough data at this point to suggest that Vooch, Zach, DeMar cannot lift 5-man units up by themselves. So it is imperative who those other 2 are. So that's why it does become important for who those 2 are. And at the moment, Pat is not living up to that. So I'm not going to be absolving Pat. I can't do that. He needs to be significantly better than he is. Yes, we can talk about the mid-3 and their limitations and all those things. We can recognize that. But as much as we want to say that, we also have a lot of data points to suggest when you do pair those three guys with the right type of role guys, you can get good functioning positive lineups in place as well. So you're not wrong. I somewhat agree, but I also don't want to sort of, like I said, absolve the role players or suggest that they don't need to do more and it's on these 3 guys to really lift up the entire 5-man unit, because we know that's not going to happen because we've got enough data to suggest that can't happen or won't happen, which is annoying, but it is what it is. But we also have a lot of data to suggest we can make this work.
That's the problem, though, is that that's
but there's no fixing that problem. Like you can't fix the DeMar, Vooch, Zach dynamic right now. Like we can't fix it now because it hasn't fixed over the previous two years. So what can you do to enable them more? I think that's what I'm interested in. Less so, like the numbers are what they are right now across this season. They look really bad because the team more generally has been really bad. But we know when you pair Caruso with these guys and another experienced, good defensive-minded vet, that things can work. And we've seen that with Lonzo and Caruso. We've seen that with Caruso and Patrick Beverley. And to be fair, we've seen that in lineups with Caruso and Patrick Williams when Pat has brought it. But right now, we're not seeing it. And if we don't continue to see it, I want to see Torrey Craig in there, and I maintain that position, William.
Yeah, don't disagree. I think those 2 things can both be true at the same time. But I can tell you who is most certainly not the best role player to put around those guys. That is unfortunately Dalen Terry, who there was a little bit of consternation about whether his 3rd-year team option was going to get picked up. Today was the deadline. It did get picked up, so he will be around. Just wanted to point that out before the end of the show. We can have a longer conversation about Dalen in the coming weeks or months, but right now he is really struggling out there. But I think, it would have been pretty surprising had the Bulls not picked up the team option and let him walk after the season. I would have been really surprised by that. So just small piece of news. We'll get more into Dalen another time, but we've already gone long here. Mark, happy Halloween week. I hope you are doing well. Did you get to trick or treat at all with C Red Teddy?
No, he's too young for that, but I detest Halloween. I'm really disappointed in Australia more generally that we are slowly adopting this as a thing. We're getting very Americanized in that sense. So there was kids approaching my door and, knocking on my door, asking for lollies last night. And I was just like, oh, go away, you freaking kids. So no, William, I do not like Halloween. C Red Ted will not be participating in Halloween. I have no... I sound like an asshole right now, don't I? Sorry,
Yes.
Sorry, kids. But just don't come to my door, please, in future. That would be appreciated.
Well, if I ever show up to Australia, I'll be knocking on your door with a bag and asking for lollies. Mark, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking Bulls with you. Sarah, thank you for hanging out with us. We will be back for pregame tomorrow night, the Bulls are playing the Mavs. Luka Doncic is looking pretty good. You can go look up his numbers while you're tuning out here. But as always, Mark, great time. Follow Mark on Twitter at MKHoops. I am at Will_Gottlieb, and you can follow us and our show at CHGO_Bulls. Until tomorrow, we will see you guys then.
We all silly like the mayor.